Why didn't Gojo turn evil instead of Geto? What would the world of Jujutsu Kaisen look like if Gojo did turn evil? Well, the answer to the latter of those two questions is simple.
領域展開無料空所
However, the first question is a lot more nuanced. Gojo's past arc is short, but the storytelling and themes covered make it one of my favorite arcs in modern anime. This arc sets the stage and gives depth to some of Jujutsu Kaisen's most popular characters, specifically Gojo and Geto. This arc shows that the main difference between Geto and Gojo psychologically ultimately stems from their sense of self. In this video, I'm going to explain the difference in Gojo and Geto's philosophy and what ultimately led them down their respective paths. Beginning with their respective views of the strong and weak's place in the world, it's ironic that they both chose the path that they did. At the beginning of the Hidden Inventory arc, Gojo talks about how exhausting it is to look out for and protect the weak. Geto explains that a proper society works through the survival of the weak. The weak help each other and discourage strength. He tells Gojo that Jujutsu sorcery exists to protect non-Jujutsu sorcerers. Of course, Gojo, being the strongest sorcerer, rejects this idea. He says assigning reason and responsibility to strength is what the weak do. Looking deeper at his past, it's easy to understand how Gojo came to see the world like this. From birth, Gojo was destined to be a legendary sorcerer. When Gojo was born, it's said that his birth shifted the balance of the world. The rumor of the kid in the Gojo clan born with the 6 eyes and limitless quickly spread. As a kid, Gojo was put in the fear of God and these grown-ass men just by looking at them. He quickly began to be known as the strongest sorcerer of his era, and after perfecting his reverse curse technique in his battle with Toji, his spot was even more solidified. The problem with this is that being born with such a powerful title, it often precedes you. For Gojo, this manifested into his entire identity being distilled into just being the strongest. He had no need to find a purpose because from birth it was already determined he would be the strongest. His purpose was to bring balance into a world of increasing curses. Because of this, Gojo becomes a Jujutsu sorcerer really on a whim. That is, until he meets Riko. After bonding with her while being assigned to protect her, he starts to see the value in protecting the weak. Along with this, his title of the strongest is finally challenged by Toji. Losing the fight with Toji ultimately forces Gojo to elevate to a level far stronger than before by perfecting reverse curse technique. This is why Gojo has his crackhead moment where he's high on his own power. He says even though Riko just died at that moment, he doesn't feel angry about it. Instead, everything just feels right. He was indeed alone the strongest one, and from that point on, he'd never lose a fight again. After his fight with Toji comes a very important moment in Gojo's life, and the reason I'm making this video. Gojo goes to take Riko's dead body from the hands of the Star Religious group, and as he's walking out, all the members of the group are applauding. Geto enters the room and you can see the emptiness in Gojo's eyes. Gojo looks at Geto and asks if they should kill everyone there. Gojo couldn't wrap his head around the thought of a crowd of people openly celebrating the death of a 14-year-old girl. He says the way he feels at that moment, he wouldn't feel any type of way about killing the people. Geto stops him by telling him there will be no point in killing them. The members that are here are not responsible. It's the higher ups in the organization that are responsible. Gojo, who lived most of his life without a carefully thought out purpose other than being the strongest, asks if there even needs to be a point to it. Geto tells him that it's very important for a Jujutsu sorcerer that there is a point. We skip to a year later and we see how these events also impacted Geto. Geto's entire reason for being a Jujutsu sorcerer was to protect the weak, aka non-sorcerers. However, this job weighed more on him mentally and physically in comparison to Gojo. For Geto, exercising and absorbing curses became more of a chore. According to Geto himself, absorbing curses tasted like
swallowing a dirty rag that's been used to clean up shit and vomit.
Along with this hatred for curses, Geto's hatred for non-sorcerers grew partly due to how bad Toji kicked his ass, but also because of the fact that they were the reason for everything in the first place. Curses are born from the release of curse energy from non-sorcerers as a result of negative emotions. Geto starts to question his purpose and why he's fighting to protect the very people that are hurting him the most. Watching his comrades die one by one and constantly exercising and absorbing curse after curse, Geto snapped. While on a mission, Geto witnesses 2 kids, Mimiko and Naniko, in prison and ridiculed by non-sorcerers simply because of them having curse techniques. Seeing this was his breaking point as he killed the entire village, including his parents, to solidify his new path in life. Gojo confronts Geto after the fact, and that's when we get the legendary line.
Do you think you're the strongest because you're Satoru Gojo? Or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest?
Basically, Geto is picking at Gojo's lack of self-identity outside of being the strongest. He explains to Gojo that this time there is a reason for killing non-sorcerers, an important reason at that. The irony of their relationship is that when Gojo was at his tipping point, wavering between good and evil, Geto was there to keep Gojo in check. On the other hand, Gojo was not there, nor did he notice Geto slipping further and further into darkness. Gojo was unable to understand the difficulties associated with being a Jujutsu sorcerer because, like I said earlier, for For the most part, the job came easy to him. Unlike Geto, Gojo couldn't comprehend the ills of the world and how they could weigh on the average person, specifically the average jujutsu sorcerer. Additionally, it's important to look at how ego death impacted Geto and why Gojo didn't experience one. Ego death is a term for a psychological phenomena coined by Carl Jung. It's defined as a complete loss of subjective self-identity. In my Blue Lock video, I explained the positive side of ego death, but Geto displays the negative aspects of ego death. On the positive side of ego death is self-actualization and new positive perspectives. However, on the negative side is confusion, dissociation, and a new destructive perspective. For Geto, his ego death meant a new perspective on his purpose in the world, and as we see, it was ultimately destructive both outwardly and inward. He became a killer, which was outwardly destructive, and this ultimately led to his death. This never happened to Gojo because his sense of self was never lost. From birth, he was known as the strongest. While this was challenged in the fight with Toji, he ultimately grew from it and fully embraced his identity as the strongest. Gojo never had to question who he was, which is good and bad. As I mentioned earlier, because of this, it's hard for him to build meaningful connections, which is why Geto was the one he described as his one and only best friend. Both of these characters show the importance of purpose and being weary of the negative side of ego death. You should find your inner purpose through inward reflection. However, you shouldn't become too attached to it, nor should you let it define you. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you want. I love you, and I'm out. Peace.